And it's time now to have a conversation with someone you've probably not seen on your TV screens in quite a long while. Let's play a guessing game, yeah? She is, or she was, a female partner in the London office of DLA Piper, one of the world's largest firms, and the second ever black partner in the UK at an international law firm. But maybe that is still out there, right? She's a former legal advisor to President Kufuor. Maybe you're getting closer. And also a former deputy minister at the office of the president under John Agyekum Kufuor. She's an Oxford scholar. She was at the Said Business School, but also the first Ghanaian recipient of the Oxford University's Women's Scholarship and a founding council member of GARIA, that's the Companies Act, and CIRA. And she is also a chartered insolvency practitioner and a philanthropist. I'm talking about none other than Vickie Bright. And there she is. Vicky, good morning.
Good morning, Ben.
Let me try and remember. So you served under John Agyekum Kufuor somewhere in late 2004, actually.
Yes, at the end, yeah.
To the end of his term.
20, yeah, so I did the second term in full, yes.
The second term
but
in
I
full.
came literally right at the end of the first term.
So which one came first? Legal advisor before
Legal advisor before. Yes.
Deputy minister.
It was more of a technical role before I became a deputy minister, yeah.
Okay. I'm curious, how did you get into politics?
Am I really a politician?
Well, you tell us.
I guess that's the question. I see myself more as someone who is a nationalist. You know,
Okay.
I'm really interested in the Ghana agenda rather than any political agenda per se. So it was something that I felt I was doing as a contribution to the development of the country, really.
Right. And since that time, I mean, 2008 leading into 2009 when the MPP lost the election, since that time you've been up to so many things. Before getting into politics and after supposedly exiting politics. What have you been up to?
Oh gosh, I've been here, there, and everywhere, Ben. I've done so many things. I worked, or still do actually. I'm a senior advisor at the late Madeleine Albright's outfit, headquartered in Washington, D.C.
The Madeleine Albright?
Yes, the Madeleine Albright.
Okay.
I did that, and I'm still doing that. I also co-own a law firm here in Ghana. I'm managing partner of that law firm. I have also done quite a lot of philanthropic work. One of the things I did actually in the philanthropic work was with one of your reporters in Kumasi, Love FM, Ohiming.
Ohiming too, yeah.
Yes, he reported on a girl, a 13-year-old girl who had been defiled at the time. Ooh. And I was really touched by the story. I got in touch with him, and together I was able to, it was a very, very tragic story, and we were able to rehabilitate her, get her proper medical help and some counseling, and also relocate her and her mother to a nearby town because she couldn't go there because it was allegedly the chief who had defiled her. So I've done quite a lot of that kind of thing, donations to hospitals, that kind of thing. That's what I do in my with my philanthropic life. I do a lot of advice to multinationals, to presidents, you know, governments around the world, et cetera, et cetera. And I was also in Oxford, and, you know, that was a very humbling experience for me, you know, being at Oxford University, sitting in the hallowed ground and kind of weeping for Ghana's future at the time.
Weeping for Ghana's future.
Yes, at the time, simply because I just realized how far behind we are really as a nation, and we are blessed with so much. We have so many brilliant people, both here and outside the country, and what we could do, and also seeing how the world was evolving and where we fitted in within that whole structure. So yes, I have done quite a whole breadth of things.
It appears, I mean, we could do a whole show on what you've been up to, but let's talk about, since you've already started talking about how far we had fallen maybe from the dream, from the Nkrumah era to today. If you look at the state of Ghana today, through your well-traveled lenses, what do you see?
If you ask me how far we've come, I'll say, or how well we've done, I'll say we've done reasonably well. I would like to say it's good. I'd like to say it's great, but I'll just stop at reasonably well. And why am I saying that, Ben? I'm saying that because, look, we are currently at the brink of the fourth industrial revolution. The world is at the precipice of the fourth industrial revolution. Just as a reminder, the first industrial revolution was the era of the steam engine, when we had mechanized production, and then we had the era of electricity, where we had mass production. Then we had computers, where we then had automated production. And now, the fourth industrial revolution, we have AI, we have advanced robotics, we have quantum, physics and all of those things. So we are getting quantum computing, is what I meant to say. We're getting to a point where I'm using the word exponential, because one quantum computer, we will get to a point very soon, not in the too distant future, where one quantum computer will be able to power, or will have the power, the capacity of all the computers in the world. Imagine that. And it's not in the too distant future, because China already has a prototype. Microsoft has a prototype. And they are thinking that within 3 to 5 years, this thing will be real. So it's not so far-fetched. And where are we? We are still trying to cover the basics.
We are not even able to make computers of our own.
This is it.
The best we do is assembly.
This is it. So we are, the world is growing at an exponential rate. And we really need to do much more than we're doing. Look, China is building 1,000, or has built 1,000 kilometers an hour, railway. Yeah. There are people going into space, and we are also not, we have people we can also call on. Do you know, for example, that we have very celebrated Ghanaian artists here, and I'm talking about painting rather than music. We also have celebrated musicians, of course, but the reason why I bring this up is because one of those artists, do you know that his work is actually in space, and it was taken there by Jeff Bezos, Amazon. Okay. And I don't know how many Ghanaians know this.
Is it Ibrahim, or which other one?
But Ibrahim is the other one.
Okay.
So we have brilliant people. Why are we not taking advantage of these people to actually contribute to the national development? And then you have the Niche Cocoa guy. I don't know how many people know that he's actually now the largest African investor in food and beverage in the US.
Yeah, he collaborated with, I don't know whether it's Germans or Americans, but he's doing it there.
And this is, these are big things. You have Fred Swanica, ALU, so we really ought to do better than we are doing. And, we are a country, we were a country of firsts. The first sub-Saharan country to gain our independence, et cetera, We all know what we've done as a nation. So we're at a reasonable place. It's not a great place, but hey, perhaps we can get there.
We could have done better, but we are also not, it's not as though we have done nothing at all.
No, we haven't not done, nothing. on double negatives. But we've done something. But it's not far enough. And we could have done better given what we have and who we are as a nation.
The late, and may his soul rest in peace, Professor Chinua Achebe had a book titled The Trouble with Nigeria. It's a small book, but a great read. It literally, you can pick that book today and it will reflect all the problems you see in many African countries, including Nigeria, including Ghana today. And this was written in the late 70s or so?
Right.
And everything is still, it's like classic, African problems. When you look at Ghana, what is the problem with Ghana and the Ghanaian that you see?
I think, we have many problems, but I think we love mediocrity in this country. And I know people are, yes, we love mediocrity. And I think people are not going to like me saying that. But we do tend to celebrate mediocrity here. People are shy to talk of their success. I mean, I have a friend who was telling me not too long ago that he's a private business person, and he was saying, oh, you know, I just had a great trip with my wife, blah, blah, blah. I did really great. You know, I had a great year, blah, blah, blah. But when people ask me how it is, I'm like, kakra, kakra, you know, because he's just afraid to let people know that, hey, I had a great year, you know. So it's things like that. I mean, we need to celebrate success more. We need to be, because we have brilliant people.
We should be more like the Nigerians?
Maybe
and maybe
not,
the Angolans?
Maybe not so ostentatious, because that's not really in the Ghanaian, it's not the Ghanaian way. That's not how we are. I love our demeanor as a people. We're humble and we're, you know, I mean, but humility doesn't mean you can't also celebrate success. So
right.
I think we need to do more of that, and celebrate each other more, and celebrate our achievements more.
In that regard, Ghana at 68. Just on the 6th of March, we were talking about, hey, we're 68 years. How far have we come? How far do we still have to go? I mean, if you look at the development programs, regimes, even from the Gettysburg era, and you could say that it was skewed towards production that would then go outside the country, and production that would yield towards the imperialists rather than towards Ghana. So even if you look at the railway systems, they were just headed into cocoa producing areas, mining areas, and all of that. But at 68, after having taken over the reins of governance, what is it that at 68 we can really point to and say, at least in this area, we did it?
That's a tough question, Ben, because as I said before, and I guess part of the answer lies in my previous response to where we are, when I said we were just at a reasonable place. And I think, what can we say we've done? We've done some things. I can't really point to anything and say, you know, beat my hand on my chest and say, yes, in this thing we are excelling. We don't even have a unicorn. I mean, there are African countries now there are African unicorns now. And I would have loved for Ghana to be, and really, I think it's probably something that would not have been far-fetched as an expectation, given who we are as a nation and what we have, that we should have at least one unicorn in Ghana by now. We don't have that. And that is the way the world is going. So for me, I think there's a lot that we can do. I look at, we are still exporting raw materials, still importing value-added products. These are things we can do better at. But and that for me is why this lack of, you know, these infrastructural limitations that we have, these developmental challenges that we have continuously. We haven't really addressed the issue of corruption, which is like you go 2 steps forwards and 4 steps backwards. You know, so it's like running on a hamster wheel. We are just standing on the same spot.
You just go round and round.
We just keep going round
without
and round
going anywhere.
And patting ourselves on the back. And this is why I'm actually excited about President Mohammed's 24-hour economy and the big push. And I'm actually baffled that people are poking fun at it. I don't understand why they're doing that. Yes, it's a bone, and some flesh needs to be put on the bone. It needs to be explained better for Ghanaians to understand what it is. But if you look at the world now, I mean, a lot of countries are practicing the 24-hour economy. They may not be calling it that, but they are practicing it because that's where the world is headed. If I'm sitting in Paris or somewhere and I even need a first aid kit at 4 o'clock in the morning, I can have it. Or I want to order food, I can do that. And that's where the world is headed. So I don't see why people are finding it so, you know, vicious, if you like, to use our...
In fact, it reminds me, just to interject, that is why some countries, you know, a lot of Indians have work outsourced from other countries, the US and other countries.
Yes.
For example, those who are, for the banking system, for example, you need some consultancy. You call them 24 hours. They have Indians that they've outsourced
Absolutely.
to, and then they'll respond. Even in Ghana, there are people doing that, the service industries. That's a 24-hour setup, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And also 24 hours doesn't mean 3 shifts of 8 hours each. That's very simplistic. I think, you know, if someone is closing at 4 now and they are closing at midnight because of, you know, this new era, then that feeds into the 24-hour economy. I feel that it's, you know, countries are using it as a way to actually create or increase economic growth and also to improve the quality of life for the citizenry. And in Ghana here, it gives us an opportunity to capitalize on untapped potential, and to create jobs and to stimulate our local businesses. So I'm struggling to understand why people are poking fun at it. I think it's an excellent initiative by President Mahama. Yes, there are things that need to be explained and there are questions that need to be answered. But if you also juxtapose that against the big push, it's
$10 billion.
Yes, it's very exciting. Why do I say that? Because we have infrastructural challenges, limitations, and the big push is mostly about infrastructure. And we
have schools under trees.
We have schools under trees. I saw a documentary the other day with with children still, I mean, they didn't have anything. I saw a documentary last year sometime with children in disused graveyards. And, you know...
I mean, we have one that we've been airing, Crumbling Start. Emmanuel Jivenu, our features editor.
Yes, I saw that.
You know, we have over 5,300 of those schools under trees currently.
It's tragic. And so why would you poke fun at something like that? And yes, we don't have money at the moment. We all know.
I was about to get to that. I mean, people talk about the reality. Do you have the money?
We don't have money. But hey, guess what? There's a fantastic thing called PPP. And me, as a young lawyer in England, I was fortunate enough to have been involved in some of the very first PPP projects in the world. They were called PFI at the time, Private Finance Initiative. And I did that. And then later on, as a partner, I actually led a number of big PPP projects in the UK. You know, I was involved in quite a number of them. So it is something I understand thoroughly, inside out. And we have done some PPP projects here. Of course, we don't always here negotiate the best terms. So we need to fix that, because if not, you end up in judgment debts, blah, blah, blah. So PPPs are something that we can take advantage of. But of course, before you do that, you need to instill some confidence in our economy. Because one of the things, in fact, credibility is one of the biggest challenges for President Mahama, in the sense that he has to attract investors into the country. It's the country's credibility I'm talking about.
Right.
And I think that for me, the way he's going about things so far gives me confidence that he understands what he's doing. But the proof of the pudding is in eating it. So the implementation is what is key. And I'm sure he's very, very much aware that this thing will form a huge part of his legacy. So I'd like to think that that it will end well. And of course, it's not just PPPs. We need the right regulatory frameworks. We need incentives for the private sector, because, and even there's education. We have to educate people to understand what it means. Because look, for it to work, you need a partnership between government, the private sector, and communities.
Right.
Government cannot do it by itself. So government itself needs to understand the initiative. I won't call it a policy. I would call it an outcome, because, you know, Manhattan was not magic. I mean, you have to take certain steps to get there. And so if you take those steps, then that is an inevitable, almost inevitable outcome. And so it's more of an outcome. And maybe part of the confusion stems from the fact that it's being called a policy. There's a big difference. Right. It's an outcome. So what are these steps? Let's take those steps and let's make sure we have the right people in place. And if people are not performing, they need to be fired. And
Guzitano was on the floor of Parliament. I mean, they've been elaborating a bit. It's not something that is altogether yet, and I don't think it's something that will be altogether under just one regime. If as a country we decide we're going that way, then it's something that, whether policy or program, whatever you want to call it, it must be something that must be continuous,
yes.
which is where the NDPC comes in, and how different governments from 1992 have treated the National Development Planning Commission after it was formed, you know, because then there seems to be the NDPC's projections, and then the government that comes into power decides what it wants to do. But on that same front, two things. Partisan politics in Ghana since 1992, because what we are talking about also feeds into the political, you know, space. I want you to share with me the good, the bad, and the ugly. And you have been a part of a bit of it between late 2004 and closing 2008.
It really hasn't helped us at all. You know, this whole winner takes all approach, this whole
zero sum.
Zero sum. I mean, it's really not helping us at all. We need to be, and this is why I'm saying that it needs to be more of a nationalistic thing rather than a partisan thing. Because look, we've tried it and tried it and tried it and tried it, and it's not helping us. And I just wish that, for me, it's like all roads need to lead to Rome. And if Ghana is Rome, then, you know, I just see political parties as taking a different path to get to Rome. And so it shouldn't really be about that whole thing. If someone does something that is good for the country, then we have to acknowledge that it is good for Ghana. You know, if someone does something that is not good for Ghana, then it's not good for Ghana, not because they are MPP or because they are NDC, but it's just bad for the country. You know, so for me, that is the ugly part of the politics. So I am happy that these Agenda 111 projects that have been started across the country, which have not been finished, I understand not even one is ready.
At a cost of 400 million, without one being...
At 400 million. I mean...
That's not to say it is not a good project, but no completion.
But we don't have completion. And until we've completed, we can't really get any benefit out of it, any tangible benefit out of it. So I'm happy that the government is saying, no, hang on a minute, we need to complete these things. And so that's another thing that I think is good about the new president's posturing generally. So we need to just get in with the program, as it were, rather than do our own things when we get there. And also tackle corruption. Just because it's your own, the person is from your own party, doesn't mean you should sit on it or turn a blind eye to it. I mean, look at the issues with Galamsey, for example. Politics plays a huge part of that, or at least has done in the past. And it's not helping us. So we need to move away from that.
As a lawyer, since you've mentioned corruption twice now, or about 3 times, let me ask you, what do you make of Oral, Operation Recover or Loot, and some of the mechanisms that have been put in place to ensure that if some people ought to face legal consequences, they face them, but that we recover what belongs to the state, the ordinary people of Ghana?
Look, Ben, we have to recover the money. I want my money recovered. You want your money recovered. I'm sure everyone in this building and every Ghanaian taxpayer wants their money recovered. We cannot work this hard for just an individual, a greedy individual, to take the money for their own personal pockets. It cannot be allowed to happen. It's something that we must not countenance anymore. And actually, we can't afford to allow these things to happen anymore if we are serious about developing our country. I think Oral is a great initiative. At the end of the last election, in fact, during the campaign, corruption was a huge part of it. And these are part of the promises that President Mahama made to the people of Ghana. And I am excited about Oral. I don't see people, as long as it's doing what it's mandated to do and it's not persecuting anybody. And so far, we haven't seen any persecutions, you know. So as long as it stays within the ambits of the law and the ambits of its legal mandate, I'm okay with Oral. And I'm actually excited about, I mean, Honorable Okujato Ablakwa is in charge of it. I like him because of the way he actually highlighted some of the corruption incidents that were taking place in the last administration. I remember seeing a program where, with his own money, he had bought a ticket and gone somewhere, I think Missouri or somewhere, I can't remember which state it was, over this National Cathedral scandal. And he got there, looked at the address, and it was a big warehouse. It wasn't an office, it wasn't anything. So look, so he's a man that I think has done well for the country, and I think that's the right place for him to be.
And it's been, go ahead.
And so, yes, so as long as we stay, and there's a lawyer on the committee, as long as we stay, Martin Pebo is on the committee, as long as we stay within the ambits of the law, and people don't see it as a witch hunting organization, I think we're good, because we need our money to be recovered. We need anything that has looted. And look, if you haven't looted anything, you have nothing to be afraid of. And if it were to be, if it's the case that people are being persecuted, Ghanaians will go out there and say, this is not how we behave in this country. And as I said, so far, nothing like that is happening. They're quiet, they are doing their investigations, they are working together. So together with all the other anti-corruption agencies, YOCO, all of them, Office of the Special Prosecutor, etc., and the courts, the judicial system, I'm sure the chips will fall where they ought to fall.
I see. And of course, then there's also the situation with, since you've brought up Oral, to make tracks, Kenoforiata and the recent OSP, that does not necessarily have to do with Oral. Invasion of his home, if you like, if you want to call it that. There's been, some suit in court, and the OSP is also saying, if you don't come into the country on this date, I think it's June the 2nd or something of the sort, then I'll publish your name again as being a fugitive being wanted. There's Gift Awari, the former deputy director of the NSA, or NSS actually, but NSA in terms of the authority, who also recently came into the country, was questioned by the NIB, and then was allowed to go, I believe, on bail. Some people have felt those were witch hunts, so to speak. What do you think?
Well, look, it's not good to invade people's homes. And I thought the OSP came out and said it wasn't them. Did they not come out?
Yes, there was some,
yes.
some...
So I don't know who did that invasion, but whatever it is, it's a private space. I mean, homes are private. And I think that unless you have a warrant, if you have a warrant, I mean, there are occasions where, for whatever reason, courts grant warrants to actually go and do searches in people's homes. But, all these unauthorized raids and all the rest of it, and I think people have come out from the government to say, look, we don't know we don't know what happened there. So I would not condone that kind of behavior. But that said, if it is the case that the OSP or any other organization feels that there's necessity to go and investigate someone or go and recover something from someone's home, then it has to be done properly in accordance with the rule of law and within the ambits of the Constitution, and taking into consideration the person's own rights as well. Yes. So, yeah. And in terms of this, what do you call it, this list and being on the red list and all of that, I think he's now appointed lawyers, and the lawyers are dealing with the OSP, and I think things are calm now again. So let's see how that pans out.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Akufo-Addo administration. You served under Akufo. How would you assess President Akufo-Addo's 8-year term? And maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, how well do you feel he performed?
On a scale of 1 to 10, that's hard. That's hard to put a number to it. What I'll say, though, is that it all started with such hope. And, Ghanaians had such big expectations. There was such goodwill following the former president. I remember when he was elected, even the Makola women reduced the prices of goods before he could even do anything, as soon as, the spare parts guys in Abosoka and all of that, because they were just so excited. They thought, hey, they're going to show us how this is done, But unfortunately, by the end of it, everything had fallen down like a lead balloon, as far as I'm concerned. It's sad. That's not what we expected. We had an over-bloated government. We are a small country of 32 million people. We had no business having 100+ ministers. And one thing I could just never get my head around, and this doesn't just apply to him, but also to some other African leaders. You take a private jet, fuel it with so much money, and go cap in hand to a country and sit in front of someone asking for money when that person has just taken a public train to work. I mean, there's something seriously wrong.
We don't cut our coat according to our cloth.
Buying all these V8s, and I mean, these are all depreciating assets. Why are we buying V8s in the first place? I don't understand why we need to have these cars. We can't afford them. I mean, have you seen the cars that British ministers drive? You know, so why this forced ostentation?
I've seen some of them on bicycles.
Exactly. Some of them are on bicycles, some are taking the tube and walking, you know, to work and all the rest of it. What is it about us that makes us want things that we really can't afford when there are more pressing things that we should be spending our money on? So yes, I felt that things could have gone a lot better under the previous administration, and I find it very sad and unfortunate the way things ended. And I mean, look, it's not me, it's Ghanaians. Look at the election results. Nobody had won by such a huge margin. So people clearly felt incensed. They just were indignant. They were upset. And people, look, I saw documentaries where children were just eating banku and raw pepper, and they said, you know, the red pepper,
right?
And with
school
water.
School feeding.
Yeah, I mean, and not even the fried pepper, not shito, just, you know, pepper, mako with pepper with water, and people, children eating once a day, and there was a lot of hardship. There was a lot of hardship, and pensioners picketing. I mean, sitting in the sun, some, you know, needing money for their medication, haircuts. I mean, it was a mess, you know. Yeah.
You talk about this bit. I remember speaking to Brigadier General Nunu Mensah once, and he said it's interesting because he thinks in Ghana we have more Toyota Land Cruisers than in Japan, where it's actually made, right? But the fun is on us. The joke is on us because we tend to do these things. But my interest. All of these people in parliament, ministers, they'll talk about corruption and all of that, cutting costs, but we will still go ahead with this V8 regime. Mm-hmm. Do you think, and I'm going to put you to the sword a bit, I don't know whether you, as a deputy minister, you were using your own vehicle or you were using a state vehicle, but the point is...
I used my own.
You used your own vehicle. Well, kudos to you for that. Yeah. What do you think we can do about that regime? And how do you feel we can still sanitize Article 71 in terms of the beneficiaries of that? Article 71 office holders, they'll serve what, a few years? And they get so many benefits that the ordinary Ghanaian probably would work 30 years, 40 years and never see. What do you think about that regime?
We need to change it. We need to, you know, go back to cutting our coat according to our cloth if we are serious about development. And I keep saying this because I'm worried at the pace at which we are going in terms of development. We're being left behind. Some of these things are easy, you know, they are low-hanging fruits.
Easy pickings.
Easy pickings. And they will make such a huge difference. I mean, I saw people who had police officers holding their bags, who had no business having police. Nobody was ever going to kidnap that particular person. Nobody is interested in them. They are not essential to national security or anything. And yet they've been appointed a police officer. I mean, I'm talking about the last regime, and I hope we don't see that here. You know, I mean, I was baffled when I saw this one particular person.
Right.
And that means that we are now, that person has a police officer with her, and then at home, she also has someone there, and then all the benefits, free petrol, free this, free that.
Well, some of them say they don't get free petrol and all of that. But on Article 71, should we make it such that if you benefit once, that's it?
Yes.
You can't benefit again. Because there are people, mind you, there are people who have been in Parliament for what? 6, 7 terms, and every time they get the benefits. Should we get to that point? Even if we are retaining Article 71, should we get to the point where you benefit once and that's it? Or should we scrap it?
I think you should benefit at the end of your term, and that's it.
Once.
I think that's fair.
That's fair.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Let's look at the Dr. Bawumia candidacy for the NPP in the last election. Oseiche Mensah-Bonsu mentioned at a point that if the elections had been held in August, the NPP would have got even 30%, not 38%, as they got. But what do you think of the Dr. Bawumia candidacy? What went wrong? Oh, and let me just add that Sarah Adjoasafo, former member of parliament for Dome Kwabenya, also says it wasn't Dr. Bawumia's fault. Mm-hmm. How do you reflect on those?
Well, I think they both have a point. I would have thought that being in that position and seeing how things had panned out in the country, I don't think he should have gone for the presidency at that time. Even if he had that ambition, I think it would have been better for him to have waited, gone and done something else, let Ghanaians forget their pain, because people were in pain. And unfortunately for him, his former boss had introduced him to us as the one, the one who was going to fix our economy, and that he had chosen him specifically for that purpose. So seeing that had gone so badly wrong, and seeing the consequences, the pain and suffering of Ghanaians, I would have thought that the best thing to have done was to have taken a break and then come back. Let people nurse their wounds a bit and then come back. But coming back right at the end of that, of the back of that, without any breather, I knew from the beginning that it was never going to work. And I
knew that the NPP was not going to be able to break the eight.
I knew, because it was so clear to me. And I was wondering why it wasn't so clear to certain elements, certain people, that this was the case. I don't know whether it was arrogance or whether it's behaving like ostriches and burying one's head in the sand or whatever it was. But it was so clear to me that I used to sit there and I was baffled at the thought that they actually thought that they were going to break the eight. I used to think, is it me, or is it because it was so clear? Because I talk to people, I talk to people, I talk to trotro drivers, I talk to taxi drivers, I talk to market women, I talk to people. So I knew the pulse of the people, and I knew it was just not going to work, So it's unfortunate.
Whom do you think perhaps would have been a better option for the NPP?
I don't know.
I mean, there was Alan Chamating, who moved away and formed the Movement for Change. There was Kennedy Ejapong, who also contested, made quite a showing for himself, quite an impression among others. But do you feel then that maybe one of them would have been a better option rather than for the former vice president? I think
so. I think anyone other than someone who was so closely linked to the administration, the kind of steering the affairs of the nation. I think anyone but would have done better. Yeah.
Let's talk about Galamsey. I know you're passionate about that issue and the havoc it has wrought on our national life. Everything. If you're eating banche, your cassava and the rest, don't think you're free, or your yam, because depending on where it's grown, you could be facing the effects. Maize, corn. They tend to pick these things from the roots. You could be affected as well, our water and other things. What do you make of it and the fight? LI 2462 was in Parliament yesterday. There was some concerns about the pre-laying, and also something I found interesting, that the minority was not in favor of taking away the power of the president to actually give or allow for licenses to be granted in mining forest reserves. I felt that was a no-brainer in terms of some powers of our presidents ought to be taken away. And if this is one of them, I think it should be. But what is your take?
I agree with you, starting with that last point. I mean, I was also baffled that the minority would actually, you can't say that you are fighting this menace and at the same time resist things that will actually contribute towards that fight. I see Galamsey as an existential threat. It's a menace. It's killing us in every way that you can think of. Ghana Water has complained for the nth time, and they are saying that if we continue in this way, they don't even know if they will be able to purify the water anymore. And in any event, would we even have the water to even be purified? You know, so we have that, we have the health challenges. Children are being born deformed. We also have the social problems. I was told by someone that there are villages in Ghana where you have half Chinese children with no fathers. These are serious social issues, you know. So as for Galamsey, and why do we have Galamsey? It's greed. It's nothing but greed. And I am at a loss why it has not been eradicated. We need force. We need something to stop it. Because we just cannot, it's an existential threat. We cannot continue. And also look at the revenue that we lose through illegal mining. Billions. How much did we go to the IMF to borrow? 3 billion.
3 billion.
And how much did we lose through Galamsey? Over 2 billion. I think that the last count it was something like 2.3 or something. That's a lot of money. You know, it's affecting our cocoa production and our standing as a nation, you know, as the second largest cocoa producer in the world. And, you know, together with Ivory Coast, we are producing, what, 2/3 of the world's cocoa needs?
Right.
And look, we went from like 1 million at the peak of our production to just about 500,000. So it's affecting us in every which way. I mean, Cocoa Board could not even syndicate the loans last year. They are in debt. They are in a serious black hole.
It's a huge debt. I'm sure at some other point we'll delve into, you know, the Galamsey issue. But I do want to do this briefly before you leave, maybe just a minute. I've also found it interesting. President Mahama promised about 30% of appointments for women here and there. You're a woman and, you know, one who has been there, done that. Why do you think there's this issue of women shying away from politics, especially? If women are such good leaders, why are many not taking up the challenge of leadership? I just want you to address that as a final point, and then we can wrap it.
I think it's difficult for women. Look, it's a chauvinistic country, you know.
Chauvinistic country.
It or not, it is.
Male-dominated, huh?
Male-dominated. And, you know, there are some men who are very forward-thinking. And I think increasingly so, which I'm very happy about. And President Mahama, I would put him in that category as one of the forward-thinking men in this country. And I'm very excited about that. Women don't take it up because it's tough. You know, in addition to doing all these things, you are still expected to do your usual chores at home. And also the stigma, the insults, the nastiness of politics. Women don't like that. They just want to come in, do their work, do a professional job and leave. If they don't like what you're saying, they'll call you a prostitute. They'll call you names. They'll insult you, etc. And I don't think women are built for that, you know. And why should we? I mean, really, we just want to. We like coming in, doing our work, and leaving. We don't like all the other mess that comes with that. Right. So I think if it was a bit more sanitized, right, it will attract more women.
Well, it's been an interesting conversation. I see a comment here from Moses Adabria, who says, I really like how she presents her answers to the host. And it's been quite a while. Maybe we should do this again at some point. But that is Victoria Bright, popularly known as Vickie Bright. She's a former legal advisor to former President John Agyekum Kufuor, also a deputy minister at the office of the president then, but she's also a philanthropist, an entrepreneur, and a legal luminary. She joined us for a conversation. You want to stick and stay? We'll be back with more action right after the break. Do stay.